I suck at jujitsu? How do I suck less at jujitsu?
I guess to suck less.
The diabolical leader of the Vietnam squad.
Hey everybody, this is Josh McKinney, and I just want to welcome you to the newest episode of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. So today we're going to be doing what seems to be a fan favorite. Anytime we do Q&A or anytime we do hot takes, people just seem to go crazy about it. It's very fun when I do a Q&A episode, when I do a hot take episode, because I always get the best questions right after that episode. So I've just been waiting, and I've kind of just been putting out a list of my favorite questions that I've been getting. I get them randomly, and when I had enough, I decided that I was going to go into this episode. And so I have a really fun place to start for us, but we have probably 5 questions and 5 very hot takes. And I think that we will kind of mix it up and just get started. And I thought a great place to start would be this question, and I have a piggyback hot take on it. But this question: can you teach jiu-jitsu as a white belt? And then also on top of that, I thought I would piggyback. I don't know who asked the first question, but I thought I would piggyback with this hot take from one of my brown belts, which is just because you are a black belt doesn't mean that you're good at jiu-jitsu. And first off, the black belt thing. Let's say, that sounds wild. Like if you start jiu-jitsu, if you're a white belt and you get started in training, you start to say like, man, I'm getting a lot better. And then I roll with a black belt. And what happens is they beat you so bad, so effortlessly, that you basically say to yourself, well, I should never do jiu-jitsu again. I'm terrible. I will never be that good. This guy is, he's untouchable. But the truth is, that is not always the case. It feels that way when somebody is just 20% better than you in jiu-jitsu. It feels like there's nothing that you can do that will ever work. But then on top of that, not all people that have the piece of cloth of a black belt actually are good. And so I thought a fun place to start this episode was just this thought on I want to say it was an Instagram reel that I watched the other day. And it was a clip of Big Dan talking. And what he said was, he gets a lot of questions about being a purple belt that is winning all kinds of ADCC Opens, that is in the ADCC and beats black belts regularly. Why are you not a black belt? That's what people ask. And his statement, and I think this makes a lot of sense, and I think if people understood this, it would help them stop focusing on belts at all in jiu-jitsu. His statement was that belts are your personal progression. They are not your skill in the art. And his example was if you put a 60-year-old black belt or 65-year-old black belt, and he's very, very good at jiu-jitsu, but he's got bad hips, bad shoulders, bad knees, and then you put him up against a big, strong blue belt that's pretty athletic, that blue belt's going to win almost every time. Does that mean that the black belt is not as good? Does that mean that the black belt is not as good at jiu-jitsu? No, it's just where he's at in his personal journey, right? We talk about, like, in some of the episodes, the idea of endless progression. We talk about how to not fall into that trap of being the 65-year-old black belt who can no longer do jiu-jitsu anymore. But that's a different note for a different day. But on that same note, he said, for me, I'm a purple belt because for my potential, he's like, I don't think I'm close to my potential. That's why I'm not a black belt. Black belt would be really reaching, high potential. And something else when it comes to black belt, you'll always hear black belts say when somebody gets promoted to black belt. They've trained for a long time. They've trained for 10, 12 years. And then they get their black belt, and everybody says this thing, the journey begins. And I remember when they told my coach, Kyle, that, and it was like, that's the dumbest thing ever. This guy's in the UFC. This guy just won Pans as a brown belt. This guy has been doing jiu-jitsu, I think probably at that time for like 12, 14 years. Who knows? But it is, and he gets his black belt and people are telling him the journey begins. And what was super interesting is now looking back 14 years later, I go, oh, wow, he has been at this belt as long as he was at all the other belts combined, or more for that matter. And I actually don't know how long he has had his black belt. But when you see that you are going to stay at black belt for a crazy amount of time, that is when you start to realize, and that's when we always say, for most black belts, the belt doesn't matter anymore. And they always tell white belts that. We tell blue belts that, yeah, don't worry about the belt. Don't worry about the belt. But the problem is you only stop worrying about the belt as a black belt, there's really nothing you can do for your progression at that belt level under most people. You can just keep contributing to the art. You can keep trying to get better. And so for most people, they think that the belt represents skill. And this is what my brown belt was saying. And he is right. It doesn't represent skill. There are, of course, people that get their black belt that don't even have black belt skill and it has nothing to do with physicality. And on their personal journey, they probably shouldn't be a black belt. But a lot of times that's a coaching thing. That's not their fault, But then on to the next question. Can you teach jiu-jitsu as a white belt? I think that the short answer is, why would you want to? Okay. And I'm going to expand on this question more, but there are situations that it makes sense. Some people, they're training jiu-jitsu and the only place around is their garage. And so that's the only place that jiu-jitsu can be trained, and they're white belts together. And so, but I would say a lot of this has to do with people not understanding the roles of the hierarchy that get you good at jiu-jitsu. So what I mean by that is, can you teach jiu-jitsu as a white belt? Short answer, absolutely not. You shouldn't. You don't know how to teach because you don't know jiu-jitsu, right? But here is the other thing. What if you were the only guy in the area that has any interest in jiu-jitsu? My friend Chris Payne's talked about how he was teaching jiu-jitsu as a white belt. He was forced into that situation. Now he's one of the best coaches that I know. And when I look at that, I think it has a little more to do with not the fact that these guys became great teachers. It's because they understood that they had to be coaches, and that was something that with their lack of skill, they could still do, is coach. Okay, so understanding that an instructor, your jiu-jitsu instructor, and your jiu-jitsu coach, most of us, for almost all of us, that's the same person, but they are two different roles. Some coaches are really great instructors, terrible coaches. Some coaches are really great coaches, and they don't know enough or they don't communicate well enough to be good instructors. Neither one of those things is wrong. It's just kind of how people teach. It would be ideal for you to just have both of those skills at a super high level. But the truth is, it would be best to probably split those two roles because people are just going to have different talents that are going to be set up for that leadership and are going to be set up for that growth. But when we look at it from a white belt perspective, you probably don't have the skill or the knowledge base to go from to take somebody from white belt to black belt because you've never gone from white belt to black belt. But what you could do is you could focus on getting yourself from white belt to black belt, figuring out how you're going to do that, how you're going to approach that, what plan makes the most sense, what videos you're going to watch, because you're going to need an instructor. You're going to need somebody to actually teach you jiu-jitsu. And if for whatever location is causing you to not be able to train or not be able to train under somebody, then that means you need to utilize the internet. That means you need to learn online. And as you start to learn online from that instructor, yes, you're going to be able to share it with people, but still you are going to want to have this pitfall where you're a blue belt now and you're like, now I finally know everything that Danaher is saying to me. But the truth is, most likely all you can do is repeat what he's saying. All you are is a parakeet at that point, right? And that can be helpful too. But if somebody asks you for more context and it was a question that Danaher had never answered in the instructional, most likely you're not going to know because you don't actually understand. And so your ability to be an instructor is going to probably have a lot to do with your skill. And so most likely, no, you cannot teach at a very high level as a white belt. Most people, I would say. I'm sure there's some type of weird exceptions to this rule, people that maybe have taught other things. I don't know. But nothing that I've ever seen. As a coach, you can be a phenomenal coach as a white belt. What a coach does, what a coach's real role is when we define it, is a coach takes people from where they are now to where they want to be. Okay. We in one of the Chris Payne's interviews, we broke down that word, what a coach means. It was a town in Germany where they would make like what we would call a stagecoach in America, but a wagon that can take somebody from where they are now to where they want to be. And that is really your role as a jiu-jitsu coach. And it doesn't always mean show them the knee cut, right? That's not always what's helpful. It's not always what the person needs. Sometimes a person just needs somebody to stay on them about their weight. Sometimes a person needs somebody to stay on them about their consistency. And a coach notices that and then figures out a way to help that person have success, right? Because that's what it's about. It's not like you are a coach, so now you need to give people a list of rules that they need to follow. It's so hard for people to do that kind of stuff. But if you go in as a coach and you say, hey, you're struggling with being consistent, what if we did some different class times? What if you trained at these class times instead of these night classes? And I know you love the night classes, but you can't be consistent with them. And so your jiu-jitsu is suffering because of that. So let's make this little tweak. And if it works, then we stay on it. If it doesn't, then we find something else. But having somebody that will work with you in that way is so important. You hear all business people talk about themselves having business coaches. And what's really interesting is a lot of the high-level business people that I know, they will have business coaches that you would go, man, this guy, aren't you better than him at business? Don't you make more money at the end of the year when everything's said and done than this guy? But it's like, yeah, but this guy sees from a different perspective, right? That is when you're coaching a jiu-jitsu match, that is what you have to offer, is not like trying to put yourself in the exact moment that your student is in. Realize that you're the one on the outside and you get to give him a different perspective. And it doesn't have to be like, hey, you have to do this, right? So yeah, just random thoughts on coaching, random long answer to that question. But yeah, can you teach jiu-jitsu as a white belt? I would say probably no, you cannot teach. But can you coach jiu-jitsu as a white belt? I think you can. I've seen people do it. It's been done enough times and people have gotten good. Is that always the best thing? Most likely not. The best coaches usually have coached a lot of people and have coached them well. And so that should probably be, if you were, deciding like, oh, Josh said white belts should be coaches, I should go find a white belt to coach me. Probably not. But it's doable. It's possible. And so let's move on to our next thought. So next question is, when is the weight cut worth it? When does it have diminishing returns? So for me, I've cut weight a lot of different times and not cut weight a lot of different times. And I really have, good thoughts on it. And it's kind of this. It's always going to be the individual. When you are there, are like really simple examples of when you should pretty much always cut weight. Okay. One, when you have time and you can kind of use it as the tournament as a motivator. But when it starts to become your primary focus, and jiu-jitsu and performance in jiu-jitsu is not your primary focus, then that is a diminishing return on weight cutting, in my opinion. When you lose focus, that's the most important thing you can do when you compete, is focus, be in the moment. When you're all about making weight, generally you make weight and then you go, crap, I have to fight somebody after this? Oh no, because that was all you were thinking about. And there are a certain amount of weight that's kind of how it's got to be. But yeah, ideally you shouldn't cut those weights. And then on top of that, some people's body fat is naturally lower than others. I'm a fatty 2x4 often. And so diets, whatever we say, cutting weight, like I would say cutting weight is cutting water. In jiu-jitsu tournaments, you see that. It's very uncommon now because most tournaments make you weigh in and then compete. But still, you're going to have people that cut water. I've cut water to make weight at a lot of IBJJFs, like 2 or 3 pounds. I think max I've done was 4, and like a couple hours before the match. But that was because I had to. Sometimes the return was great because I made a weight class where I was really strong and I was able to beat guys. Sometimes, I would say in the last year, I didn't have any times that I cut weight and the returns were diminishing, where I was like, that was too hard, that was too much weight, this killed me, and I lost because of that. But coming up, I definitely had that. And I think a lot of it was just this thought of like, you should have no body fat and you got to be at this perfect weight, and that's going to be the reason you win. And for me, like, it just wasn't the reason I was winning matches. If I won matches because I was better than guys, I really, as a kid coming up, I wasn't stronger than guys. It was just very uncommon to be stronger than guys. And so I just realized that, like, okay, I could cut 10 pounds and it be super hard, and then fight guys that are still going to be stronger than me, or I can stay at this weight class, fight guys that are still going to be stronger than me. And all the way up until black belt, that mentality worked great for me. Black belt adult even, that mentality worked great for me. But when I got to this point where people were on so many PEDs and I wasn't going to do that, so I had to really optimize everything physically. One, make sure I was healthy enough to train consistently, healthy enough to fight as hard as I could for a 10-minute round. And then for me, that was also being at the right weight class. And so when I was at adult, doing middleweight was just the better option. It was much harder for me to make medium heavyweight. I felt as strong as a lot of guys, but one, they were all like a foot taller than me in that division. And that is a really frustrating thing to have to fight against. But then also, it's like when you give up that much strength and, those guys are cutting from a higher weight class, that's when it's like, ugh, I'm giving up almost 20 pounds of muscle to a guy who made the same weight as me. That feels like a place that I should start cutting. And that was where I was at with medium heavyweight. That move made a lot of sense. But I literally took 9 months before I could go from medium heavy to middle. It took forever to get my weight down because I felt good. I was in good shape at that heavier weight. So I wanted to not lose muscle if possible and really just do it smart. And eventually it worked out. It was a habits thing that made that happen. But man, there were times where you get an idea of like medium or middleweight is 181, and the idea of like, oh, I could probably do 175 would come up, and as something would come closer, I would be like, holy smokes, maybe I can't. Maybe that is, and that's when I would start to lose my focus. That's when I noticed diminishing returns, and that's when I would go, no, then I'm just going to compete in the heavier weight class. So that's just kind of my reasoning behind it. But yeah, it's not always worth it. but it's not always not worth it. If you're a heavy guy, if you're 230 in the weight class and it's unlimited that you're in, and all you had to do is lose 10 pounds to be a 220 and, under, I would absolutely cut that weight, right? There's always going to be scenarios where it makes sense. And if it's healthier for you, it probably makes sense for your jiu-jitsu in the long run. But when you're doing stuff, I mean, there have been so many times that I've cut weight and it's not been healthy at all. One day I'll just share every horror story that I have for you, but I really can't right now because most of them involve cheating the rules some way or another. And so, but one day we'll do an episode on like when I retire for sure from adult jiu-jitsu competition, then I'll tell you guys all the secrets. Okay, let's go next episode. You recently did an episode on your greatest strength being your greatest weakness. Does this apply to you? If so, what strength of yours is also a weakness? Yeah, that's a good question. I don't want to answer that. I don't like that. I don't want to tell anybody my weaknesses. So I would say I have a few things that are strengths that can definitely be weaknesses. One of the biggest ones I would say is, oh man, here's a good one. This one's more fun and it's less negative against me. And so all my other ones I would be telling you guys terrible things about myself. So this is my best strength that becomes a weakness. And it is since I was a little kid, like very little, I have just always been very observant of people. And we've seen this on the podcast. There's a lot of things that we can point to where I got to have conversations with people and it changed huge parts of my jiu-jitsu perspective. And I shared it in different ways with you guys. You guys found it helpful, even though you guys listened to the same interview, right? And that is this skill, I don't even know. It's not even a skill. I guess this inherent thing that I've had. I just remember being 6, 7 years old, and my dad always had personal training clients. And so I saw so many people that he trained at our home, and I saw so many people all the time coming in and out. And so I got to interact from a very young age with a lot of different people that were adults 2 or 3 times a week for years I got to. And so I don't know, I would just notice things about them, and I would always tell my dad. And as we got older, he would just like trust my judgment on people from such a young age. And my dad is a really smart, really intelligent guy. He doesn't need a child helping him with stuff, but he would just trust that judgment. And so I think as he trusted that, I trusted it more. But that was like the positive thing, is like I could notice people's strengths, and still to this day, I can notice people's strengths in jiu-jitsu, and I can be like, hey, we can get this better. We can upgrade this, or hey, your strength is this, and it would benefit me for you to be with me and to use that strength, and it would benefit you because I will take my strengths and use them to help you. And but being able to notice that, always been a strength. Now here's the opposite side of that. You also notice everybody's weaknesses. Everybody's. Very, very quickly, very, very easily. And it's so frustrating because you become the most judgmental person in the whole wide world unless you just go, no, I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to ignore that. So that's like a, kind of a, it doesn't seem like it'd be that bad still. But that is a strength that definitely makes me way more judgmental. And, being judgmental to everybody makes it really hard to have friends if you're going to do that. And so being able to learn to shut that off and just say, hey, you know what? People are who they're going to be. And it's not even my right to have any say in that. And so when I started to do that and change that perspective, it made a difference, right? But definitely still a weakness that I have that is a strength. Next question. What is the best guard to learn/play against bigger dudes? You play top. That was my answer on Instagram, and it sounds offensive. It sounds dumb, but that is the truth. You play top. If you are competing at heavier weight classes, if you compete at 200 pounds or above, in my opinion, you should play top. I think if you compete at 200 pounds or under, you should probably play top too. But definitely in those heavier weight classes. One, because of the size of people and because of the size of you, typically there is less flexibility. And flexibility is the only physical characteristic, I guess you can say strength too, physical attribute, but I would say flexibility is the only physical attribute that you have more access to when playing guard than the person does on top when he's playing top. It's harder for me, even if I'm more flexible than you, it's harder for me to utilize that flexibility as the top player, but as the bottom player, it's pretty natural to utilize that flexibility. At heavier weight classes, people tend to be less flexible. So there's all kinds of guard play that is built around this physical characteristic of being flexible. And as a bigger guy, how do you play those if you're not flexible? Oh, just, do flexibility, try to stretch more, do yoga. It's like, yeah, most people, you don't see them increase their flexibility very much without being insanely regimented with yoga or with stretching or whatever. So what I would say is if you are playing bottom, you aren't playing a guard. Your guard's goal is to get you on top. And that may mean like you play a deep half guard, you play some type of knee shield, and your thought process is like, once I get a hug on this leg, I don't get flattened and I keep the leg and eventually I try to come up, right? But I think it should be very simple because it's like this. When you have a bigger guy that's doing jiu-jitsu and especially if he wants to compete, everyone's like, all coaches force their guys to play guard, right? But in those divisions, if you're playing guard, most likely it wasn't on purpose. Sometimes guys have good enough guards. If you have a good enough guard, a specific guard, just play that. Use it to get on top, and then you don't have to wrestle. But most guys in heavier weight classes will fight from the feet till the absolute death. And I think one of the best ways that you can, one, as a coach, just efficiency's sake, you could just tell your guys, like, hey, that are bigger, we don't play guard. You're going to learn to wrestle. You're going to learn to wrestle up every time your butt touches and wrestle up from half and wrestle up from, wherever. But you are going to spend 50% more time playing top than all the other guys in your weight class because their coaches are making them play guard because, jiu-jitsu. And, it's a simple hack, but play top. When you're heavier, you have access to way more weight to leave on the guy and to wear him out. And even in a 0-0 match, if you are bigger and you stay on top for 5 minutes, you will be, in a heavy weight class. I just would be shocked if you can lose that match somehow, if you just learn to stay on top. And so, I don't think you focus too much on a guard. I think you focus on becoming a good grappler that can accomplish tasks, and you learn to accomplish the task of being on top and staying on top. It's valuable everywhere, but I think it's even more valuable when it comes to being bigger. So, next question. You mentioned in a previous episode about how your dad let you skip school to go to a private lesson. I would like to do that with my son. Any way that I can set that up with you? Of course, I've reached out to this person, but I thought it was a good question to put in because I get those type of questions like, hey, do you do any type of private lesson? Do you do any type of seminar? Do you do any type of thing like that? And yes, I definitely do. I've been doing those type of things for as long as I've been teaching jiu-jitsu, maybe even a little longer, which is wild that people will invite you to teach jiu-jitsu seminars before you know how to teach jiu-jitsu. But regardless, who cares about that? But I thought now would be a good time to just put in our commercial break off that question because, yes, I do private lessons. I do seminars. If you reach out to me, we can always book those things. I have a lot of different I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show listeners that have scheduled video private lessons with me, and we've done on gym ownership, on jiu-jitsu technique, on specific positions that people know that I play, on competition mindset. I've done all those things. And so I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that to you guys because, I don't know, I thought it would suck if I never mentioned that to you guys. And so let's go ahead and we will take it to a commercial break and bring it over to our old pal, Josh McKinney. And he can tell us about something really exciting that we have going on at the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu Show Pro. Here is Josh McKinney. Hey guys, it's Josh McKinney. It's still me. If you watch on video, these commercial transitions have just been getting worse and worse because you can tell there is no break. It's just me sitting here talking into the microphone at a slightly different angle. But I wanted to tell you guys about something really cool that we have going on at simplifyingjujitsu.com, and that is the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu Show Pro, okay? So if you like the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu Show, we have our pro version of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu Show. And for the time being, it had been Jiu-Jitsu instructionals, Jiu-Jitsu courses that I've made and that I was really excited to share with you guys. But what we've done differently this time, this month, the month of June, we released our biggest release ever. This course that I made 7 years ago when I was a brown belt, and it was this method of taking 6-week blocks and mastering a jiu-jitsu position in 6 weeks. And as I went through that, as I did all of that, my jiu-jitsu got significantly better. But so did my students' jiu-jitsu. And I just kind of decided I was going to keep that method to myself. And I just recently, since we decided to put together the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu Show Pro, I recently thought maybe it's time to do some premium podcast. Maybe it's time to do some of the first I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu Show episodes that are on the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu Show Pro exclusively. And so what I did was I put together a 6-week course called Master Any Position in 6 weeks. What this course is designed for is to take you up one belt level, up one skill level in your own individual jiu-jitsu progression at any position that you want in 6 weeks. And it teaches you a method to use jiu-jitsu instructionals, to use YouTube videos, to use podcasts, but it teaches you a method to absorb a ton of information and to use hyper-focus to master jiu-jitsu super quickly. But what's also cool is this is to go up a belt level in 6 weeks in a specific position. I have used this method for years, and I've gotten to a point where I've used it even over 18-month blocks and used this method repetitively on the same exact idea or the same exact position, and I have been able to get up a black belt level in different positions with this method. And so I'm really excited to share that with you guys. And that's all I have. Let's go ahead and we will get back into today's Q&A episode. Oh, thank you, Josh. Thank you for that great commercial break that you just gave us. We're all so excited about all the exciting things that are going on the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu Show Pro. So next question. Let's get to what we're actually here for. And it is some slightly offensive life advice. And so it is this. Next question is, I just got my wife into jiu-jitsu. How do I keep her interested? Maybe you shouldn't. Maybe it's a bad call. I don't know if you guys saw, oh man, was it, I don't remember. I want to say it was Sean O'Malley. It was somebody's opinion on not bringing your wife to jiu-jitsu because she's going to watch you get beat up. But I don't think that is the case, in all honesty. My wife and I train together. I see a lot of people that have significant others or have a child that they got into jiu-jitsu, and it totally changed jiu-jitsu for them. And so I would say the biggest thing that I would look at is Jiu-Jitsu is fun. It's everybody's own individual thing, right? Your relationship with Jiu-Jitsu is different than mine, and it should be that way. This is a good thing. But your relationship with Jiu-Jitsu will be different than your wife's relationship with Jiu-Jitsu. And so something that I see really will kind of ruin Jiu-Jitsu when your wife comes and tries it is the husband trying to come at his wife in a different place of authority than he gets to come at her at home. Okay. And like how I could explain that is this. I am my wife's jiu-jitsu coach and a black belt and a highly sought after black belt when it comes to teaching, when it comes to competing, when it comes to beating people down that you need beat down. But in my wife's eyes, I'm a blue belt like her when we're doing jiu-jitsu. Because in our house, we're equals, right? And on the mat, it's different. And so for so many people, they and their significant other have terrible relationships with each other's jiu-jitsu because of that. There is this like, hey, I'm coming from a place of authority. I'm a black belt. And like, you're brand new. You're a white belt. You should listen to me. I know better. But the truth is, it's just like, it just can't come from your significant other. I learned really, really early the best thing to do was I train with my wife as like a drilling partner, but I never really teach her anything. If she learns something, it comes from one of the other coaches at my gym or my dad. She feels comfortable learning from those people, but when I try to teach her something, and it's not like people are like, oh, that, it shouldn't be that way. It's just like, dude, it's how marriage is. You just don't, if I was decided I wanted to cut my own hair, right? My wife did hair for 5, 8, 7 years, who knows, 9 years, maybe 9 years at this point, but is very good at it. Actually cut my hair before she ever did hair, so probably longer. And if I decided like, okay, I want to be one of these cool, hip 30-year-old dads that cuts his own hair to save money, there's no way that I would go to her for any advice. I wouldn't do it. And maybe I'm a terrible person for that. But one, it's because I know that like, well, what if her advice is wrong? I can't tell her that. She knows that same thing about jiu-jitsu with me. Like if I don't explain it right and she tells me that, then I'm going to be so hurt. Like, how dare you? I know what I'm doing. Like, oh crap, I did explain that wrong. And so, yeah, with your wife, I don't know how to get her I don't know how to keep her interested, but I know if you talk down to her in any way, if you try to act like you have authority over her on the mat, she will quit jiu-jitsu. She's not going to be a fan of that. And that is, yeah, random thoughts. So let's go into our next question. So I really liked this one. I kind of shortened this one because there's just a lot of information, but I'll give you context. So this person came into a seminar that I taught, and at one point we talked competition mindset, we talked breath work, we talked all kinds of stuff like that. And he goes out, he competes, he does a lot of the stuff, even has success with feeling good on the mat, but then goes out and loses. And then competes a little while later, same thing, able to go out and compete, and that's kind of where we'll pick this up. And so, yeah, so he talks about being plagued in this tournament. He talks about in his next tournament, just knowing that he had lost already, and having that feeling like he had already lost. And so there was this point where the ref starts calling out for points, and it gets him. He gets into his own head at this point, and then next thing you know, he gets tapped out. And then he just kind of asks, have I ever felt like losing has messed up my confidence in competition. And I would say early on, that was something I struggled with. I mean, up until purple and brown belt, I really struggled with like, man, if I lose, can I win again? You know, if I lost to this guy, he lost to that guy, I'll never be able to beat that guy over there. And when I switched my mindset and I said, you know what? One, I don't care. I'm going to go and compete, and the result will be the result. And I read this book. It's called the McKinney Manifesto, and it was about a baseball manager that when he was coaching Little League, he made the parents sign what became called the McKinney Manifesto. It's like this 7-page document saying what everyone was expected. The kids were expected to bring their own water, not have their parents run out to the field and give them water. The parents were expected to sit on the sideline and be okay that every kid is going to play a different position. And he also had some really big thoughts on kind of performance mindset, and progression. One was like, you can only control a few things when it comes to competition. You can control your preparation, so you can control that you're training consistently, that you're learning from the mistakes that you've made. You can control, and all preparation is all the way up till, like we talked about, our breath work before the matches, our warm-up before the matches. That's still preparation. And then you can control your response to the outcome. In truth, you can't control what happens. People always look at jiu-jitsu tournaments as pass-fail. I won or I lost. And it's the wrong mentality. It's the wrong mindset. The mindset needs to be chasing perfection regardless. And the reason for that is because I will see guys win matches because maybe at the very end their guy just got tired, or there was, they got lucky on something. And a lot of times they will leave that tournament and they will go, I did it. I won. I'm the gold medal champion. And they will post it on Facebook and they'll post it on Instagram. And then the next time they go compete, they're going to be like, yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get him out into, 6 minutes in, and then he's going to get tired, and then I'm going to beat him. And the truth is, it's not a good game plan. The reason that is your game plan is because you were only focused on performance. You did not look back and say, hey, I know that I got the result that I wanted, but there was a lot of jiu-jitsu that was terrible in that lead up. There were a lot of things that I need to tweak. There was, my cardio really wasn't great either. And maybe I need to make some changes in my training. And so few people can do that when they win. And then when they lose, most people just blame something else. They just go, oh, well, he had his coach there. I didn't have my coach there. And so that's why I lost. I was tired from the match before. And so that's why I lost. It's like, that doesn't matter. That should be addressed in your preparation. You know it's possible. You know what's going to happen. You can't control that. Those things are out of your control. You can't control the skill level of the person that you're going with. If you're a white belt and you get thrown in the black belt division, does it matter that you're going to do breath work? No. But also, is it an indicator of anything? No. It's not. All it is was you competing against black belts and getting thrashed. Doesn't mean you suck. It doesn't mean you should quit competing or there's this big problem. And so most of the time we get in our own head of like, man, I've been losing. But that is just a result. That comes through your preparation all the way up, staying in the moment when it's time to perform. And then we focus on how we decompress. What went wrong in those matches? How can we fix those? What could we do in our training? If you don't know, ask your coaches. If you don't know the answer to anything, coach, I don't know how to fix that I keep losing. One of the biggest answers, like if you want to stop losing, just stop competing. You'll never lose again. It's easy. Most people do that. But if you want to win, if you want to go and know that you performed great jiu-jitsu, which to me is most people's actual secret goal, and most of us don't even realize that. The reason most people get so upset when they lose is because they lose and then they go, man, I didn't even roll like myself. I didn't even do any of my jiu-jitsu. And that's a heartbreaking feeling. I've had that feeling before in big matches against tough guys. And it's so frustrating. You're like, man, I thought I was better than that. I thought I should have beaten this guy. And it wasn't there. It wasn't your day, whatever. But there have been times that I've lost, that I've gone out and just performed better than ever, out of my mind. And I've lost close matches and matches where maybe I even got screwed over or whatever. But I walked off the mat knowing like I gave that the best I could. And since the last time I competed, I have gotten better and it's noticeable and it translated. And that feeling is what I always want out of a competition. Because if I did that and I know what my best is and I go do it and the dude still beats me, what more can I do? You know, I'm doing my best. And so, yeah, I think the best way is like when you hear that negative dialogue of, hey, you lost, you're going to always lose. Some people are meant for it. Some people aren't. It's just not true. None of that is truth. Just push it out of your head. Don't dwell on it. You don't even have to beat it. You don't need to monologue against it. You just say, that's wrong. Not thinking about it. Who knows if you're going to win, right? Who knows if you're going to lose? Just go do your best. Just go perform. Think positive, you know? Like, hey, I've trained hard. That's where your confidence comes from. I've trained hard and my coaches told me this and I'm confident in them and we're working together for this. And so, yeah, I just think that it's easy to get into your own head with losing, like this idea that you just don't have it. And it's there's the quote from J.J. Watt, and it's like, something about like with success, the rent is due every day. And, you know, if you just keep paying in every day and you keep consistent, like what's funny about jiu-jitsu, as you get to black belt, you really will notice like I had guys that starched me at white belt, blue belt, purple belt, and have since quit jiu-jitsu. Okay. Just wrecked me though. Like I thought I'll never be as good as this guy. And they have since quit jiu-jitsu. And not only now with 12 extra years of training am I significantly better than those guys, but I literally have students that would beat them down at will. Do you know how good that feels? Yeah, they beat me at a tournament. They have a medal that's gold when mine's silver from blue belt. It's like, dude, that doesn't matter. You know, we say you won the battle, but you did not win the war. There's this cool video or this cool, I guess it's a song, but it's just a bunch of motivational quotes, which I usually hate. But one of it's called, and this is the main quote, is "It's not over until I win." And so if you go lose at a tournament, who cares? That's just another loss. That's your preparation for the win that you're going to try to get. And when you get that win, even though it shouldn't matter, when you've lost for a long, long time as a white belt, as a 70-year-old blue belt, as a adult black belt, when you could have defined yourself at any point and said, you know what, maybe I shouldn't compete. Maybe I'm just a loser. And then you get that win. Just a win, a submission, the right win over the right person, the dude that's always beating you down. It makes it all worth it. And so, yeah, just don't let it be over. Keep losing. Lose as many times as you have to. I promise you, if you decide that that doesn't matter to you, you will endure so much longer than anyone else. And you will end up going, man, I used to compete against that guy as a blue belt. He doesn't even train anymore. You know, I used to compete against that guy as a white belt. He doesn't even train anymore. and you'll be in a totally different world because you just said the losses don't matter. Let's move on. Holy smokes. This is a long episode. Let's go ahead and I have two pretty long ones. And they are both gold. Like I said, the hot takes are pretty hot. And so let's go ahead and I think I'm going to try to give us maybe a little bit of question reading music because they're longer, and I'm just going to read them. Yeah, that's working for me. Let me get us going a little bit higher. I think that's good. It's hard to live mix a podcast episode, but let's go. We're going to keep this reader anonymous. Let's go ahead and we will look at this. Question 8. I don't know if this is a hot take or just a complaint. Trust me, this is a hot take. I think open mat culture is severely lacking at many gyms. I use open mat in different ways, whether that's working on my A game or pushing my cardio, going with higher belts and putting myself in bad positions, or working new things against lower belts. Every time I go to an open mat, there are always way too many people sitting against the wall, just chilling. I'm not saying that you have to roll for the whole hour. I don't always roll for the whole hour. I think if you're not rolling, you could stand up and help out guys who are rolling by coaching or keeping track of points. Open mats are usually on the weekend, and people just worked all week and probably have been training all week too. So when somebody walks into the open mat and half the guys are just sitting crisscross applesauce on the mat talking, they might be inclined to do the same thing. Bottom line, open mat is somewhere you go to get work done. Man, I'm digging this. We're not even done with this. Drilling or working on something new is fine, but sitting crisscross applesauce watching two people drill is not. I swear I've seen people do 1 or 2 rounds, sit on the mat telling stories for an hour, and then go home and post on social media about how they just got better or how sick jiu-jitsu is. You are going to have a hard time getting better at jiu-jitsu while sitting crisscross applesauce. People at every belt level are guilty of this. If you just want to come to open mat to get away from your wife and kids and just hang out, that's cool. If you want to do that, though, you should have to congregate to the one corner of the mat and sit there with all the other crisscross applesaucers. And that mat should be pink. Whew. Whew. Holy smokes. A lot to unpack there. This should have been its own episode. So, here is the thing. Yes, totally agree. Totally agree. I think most people just don't know how to change it. I think even most coaches have no idea how to create open mat culture. I think most students don't know how to do it. But open mat culture is creatable. It's repeatable. I've done it on different days on my gym. I've done it at different gyms. What I would say is like, I've made the open mat white hot, man. That's like, you've got it. There's this pro wrestling thing. I remember when I would read the Shawn Michaels autobiography when I was 10 years old. And that was the first book that I ever read cover to cover in my life, including school books. I would just glaze through them, never actually read them. But anyway, that book, The Heartbreak Kid, he talked about how when he had the Intercontinental title, which was the lower class title in pro wrestling, people cared more about his matches because he made that title relevant, right? And open mats are the same way. So for this anonymous listener, I would say I agree on every single point. What my dad, Pastor Steve McKinney, loves to tell people anytime they have a good complaint like this, he says, what breaks your heart is your responsibility to fix. And so when I see this, I don't know, maybe you want to address the open mat culture at your own gym. Maybe you want to address it at a different gym. So what you do is you come in, just like you said, with something to work, but then something to pay attention to. Because this is why I agree with this statement. So whether I'm working my A game, whether I'm pushing my cardio, whether I'm going with higher belts, putting myself in bad positions, or working on new things against lower belts, that is why open mat is good for you and it's not good for other people, because you have a plan. If you want your own open mat to be relevant, if you want you to get the most out of open mat, you come in with a plan, and it should be built around your day. It should be built around how you expect to train. And for most people with no understanding of volume and intensity, they assume that the only way to get good at jiu-jitsu is to train hard live rounds. So then they come into open mat, they do one round, they're too overtrained to do anymore, or too lazy, of course. And then what? They're done. That was all I had. Well, if they had went in and said, well, I have an hour to get to do jiu-jitsu. I know that my volume is I'm going to train another time this week. I'm training today on open mat. And like this listener said, you've been training all week. You're beat up. Maybe training live is not the best thing for you. So maybe you ask somebody, hey, do you want to come in during open mat and we'll drill back and forth while the timer's going, or we'll positional spar back and forth while the timer's going. If you start to do that, not only will your open mat change, but the culture will change at your open mat. Open mat change for you, but the culture will change. So you come in with that, and then you say, hey, this guy's always showing up. He's always giving me good work. I'm going to send him a message and say, hey, do you want to, at open mat, I was going to get a small group together and we were going to positional spar knee shield, right? And you can keep your body a little more protected that way. It kind of takes the winning and losing stress out of it a lot more, because you have a really easy defined winning or defined end and beginning. If you pass, it's over. If you sweep, it's over. If you submit, it's over, right? And so then everybody's able to start that positional sparring a little bit different, but you now have this group of people that are dedicated, that have a focus, and other people will start to go, hey, that's a really good, I want to be with this group. The other secret to a great open mat, and this is the secretest secret of all time. My students always joke. They say there is like some type of secret group message that knows where Josh is going to be every single week when it comes to training. So like it's always packed when Josh comes and trains. But when he misses a week, nobody's there. Like, why is that? One, it's because people will throughout the week just ask me, hey, are you going to that training this week? Oh, no, I have something. And I tell 5 or 6 people. Then those 5 decide, the black belts aren't going to be there. I don't want to train. And then those 5 get asked, hey, are you going to be there this week? And they're like, no, Josh isn't going to be there. And then this black belt's not going to be there. And this black belt's not going to be there. Probably the highest belt's going to be me. And I don't want to be the highest belt there, so I'm not going to go. And now we have an all white belt open mat. And you get 2 rounds and everyone's sitting out. Now, if you invite the right high-level guys and just build the training around them getting good, people will show up. And that doesn't mean build the training around them hurting people, but just them getting better. Get them guys that they can get winning reps against, and do it repetitively, right? Get guys that can push their cardio. Get guys that can push their wrestling if they need it. But make sure it's beneficial for high-level guys. How I built what was, for years, the coolest open mat in St. Louis Jiu-Jitsu, and maybe in the universe. It was, and I've told you guys this story before, me and Adam Marburger, one of my friends, we had a t-shirt company. We were kind of sponsoring some people with that Jiu-Jitsu t-shirt company. But then one day, we created this really elaborate lie. And we told all kinds of really good guys that each other were going to be there at my gym on Thursday morning. And I was a purple belt. So it was like, oh yeah, it's just open mat. And it was before everyone went to work. And like the list of names of people that came through that and then came through consistently, because the first week everybody showed up and there were 10 of the best black belts that I know, 5 of the best black belts, 5 high-level brown belts, purple belts, just so many good guys for our area at the time. And it just exploded. Everybody heard about it. There were blue belts coming. There were white belts coming because they wanted to get to train with those high-level guys. Those high-level guys needed bodies. And then they got to focus. We got to focus as a group because there was a good group of us. When we would go compete, we got to focus together because there was a good group of us. But it's like people want everybody to have this excitement for competition, this excitement for the open mat. Just most people won't. So you just focus on the guys who will, and you build around them. That is contagious, and those guys will bring in better guys and bring in more guys. And so, if you are hating the open mat, that is a great way to change it. Let's go into our next question. We only have 2 left, and one's pretty short. But this one, I think we'll have to go back into the background music. Let's do it. It's time. It's time that the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show is just a great background music podcast. Let me go on this. I had to kind of tweak this question a little bit because the listener used specific names of coaches, competitors. I thought I would take those out. I don't want to get beat up by anybody, you know what I mean? So let's get back okay. We're back to our question answering music. I've listened to every episode. Okay, this one actually, I cut out the beginning part that said something about how this person's favorite episodes were the Q&A episodes. But anyway, I've listened to every episode and really appreciate your views. So thank you for that. I'm a new-ish blue belt and was wondering if I should give white belts advice if I see them lost or say that they don't know what they're doing. My go-to answer for all fresh white belts is always something John Danaher said. If on top, try to pass their legs. If on bottom, don't let them pass your legs. And always strive for the back. It worked amazing for me. But I work in a mathematical puzzle way. But yeah, should I keep my mouth shut and let my professors, who are high-level black belt competitors, let them do the teaching? And she named the competitor and high-level black belt coach for sure. Let them do the teaching. I want to be respectful. I know I don't know anything, so maybe I shouldn't give advice at all. And so that is our question, is how, should you give advice? You're new. You are a blue belt. Are you allowed to give advice to people, or should you know your place and not say anything to somebody? Especially if you see something that somebody is doing that you think is wrong. So I think that this could be a slippery slope. There are definitely the blue belt coaches that annoy everybody at the gym, that are always trying to tell people what they know. And those people, the reason it's annoying for most of us is I'm pretty sure that those people come from a place of trying to prove themselves. And that's why they try to give advice. If that is your reasoning, I don't think that should be you shouldn't do that. I know it's hard to know if that's your reasoning, but I don't sound, the way this question was asked, I don't think that that's the reasoning. I think the reasoning is that there were certain things that helped you that you want to share. And I think that is super valuable. And at my gym, that's something that I've always encouraged, because my perspective is just that. It is my perspective. I've worked very hard trying to make it the most valuable jiu-jitsu perspective that I can, but it is still only my jiu-jitsu perspective. Certain people who learn very similar to me, who think very similar to the way I do, are going to just perform unbelievably in my jiu-jitsu school because it's my perspective. But what about the other people? Well, those people had to, for years, translate what I understand and how I see jiu-jitsu to how they can make it effective and they can make it good. And then as a coach, I'm going to devalue that and say, well, it's not what I say. It's like, man, these guys learned from me. Now their explanation of what I was trying to explain is a new perspective that's so valuable to my lower level guys. And so something you will see, like the open mat culture at my gym, you will see people helping people all the time. And it's not just black belts helping white belts. I have a blue belt that's a very high level wrestler, George Kurgan, who's been on the show. Every single one of my guys asks him wrestling questions. People that have much better jiu-jitsu than he does, including myself. Sal, I mean, he's one of my brown belts, so it makes more sense that I ask him wrestling questions. And Eric is one of my black belts. But even before those guys were brown and black belts, they were white belts, blue belts, and I was asking them wrestling questions because they were more knowledgeable there than I was. And so to act like that shouldn't happen for my white belts all over, it should. I think that as a blue belt, if you have something that's valuable, especially something that's actually helped you, that is simple, try to share it. And then I talked about this idea of like advice karma. And so if you like to share that advice for people, then you say, okay, well, they didn't listen. And so I'm not going to share much more advice with them, right? But some people will listen and will really enjoy it and will really benefit. And then you go, okay, well, I should probably give them more advice. I should probably be more helpful to them and have conversations with them and see how that advice, maybe what they see that advice as now and how their perspective has changed from it. And so, yeah, those are my thoughts on giving advice as a, in the gym, as a non-black belt even. And then we'll look at our last question. This one won't get any cool theme music with it, but any big I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show episodes dropping soon. I love the solos, but it's been a while since there has been an interview. It has been a while since there has been an interview, unnamed listener. It has been, man, it's been forever since there's been an interview. And so I have one for you guys next week, and it's the biggest I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show interview ever, of course. Our most listened to episode of all time now, and I don't think I've ever told you guys this, is the Henry Akins interview that we did less than a year ago. And I got to sit down with Henry again and do another interview, and this one is from a different perspective. Last time we did an interview where I was just getting into the ideas of weight distribution and connection and his kind of training philosophies and his methods. And I was bought in, but I was kind of like at ground level trying to ask questions from there. And this time it's after I've spent almost an entire year working on these ideas and pretty much exclusively these ideas. And so I was able to ask so many deeper questions just because I am starting to learn. And it was, man, this is probably my favorite interview I've ever done. And then I assume it's gonna really pop off and be a huge one because it's just the stuff that's talked about is not always talked about, and it's definitely not talked about on many podcast platforms that I've seen, if any. And so, very unique interview. Be ready with that index finger or with that thumb to give likes, comments, shares, subscribes on that episode because you are going to need to do it, because I'm going to need you to do it, but then also because it's going to be that good, in my opinion. And so, yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed today's Q&A, a couple hot takes, and I hope that today's episode helps you guys suck just a little bit less at jiu-jitsu. Have a great day, guys.